Welcome everyone to Meld. Today marks the launch of NVIDIA's GTX 1660, the company's Turing replacement for the 3GB 1060 model. And I'll actually admit that I appreciate the much bigger differential in the names when compared to last gen. While I don't care too much for the 1660 part, actually releasing them under two different names instead of expecting consumers to look at the RAM is a plus in my book. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get my hands on a card, but we can still go over the performance and figure out whether you should be getting it or AMD's equivalents. And I'll actually say that the RX 590 and 580 are still in a pretty decent place. Now, before we get to comparisons, let's go over the specs, which are pretty much exactly what we've seen leaked over the past few weeks. Regardless, the card comes with 1408 CUDA cores, a base clock of 1530 MHz, and a boost of 1785. It also has a TDP of 120 watts and 6GB of GDDR5 video RAM. Speaking of RAM, while it's a bit of a bummer they didn't go with GDDR6, having 6GB versus 3 is well worth the trade-off in my opinion. As far as price, just like the GTX 1660 Ti, NVIDIA isn't releasing a Founders Edition, instead opting to let board partners sell a card exclusively. With that said, the specs are for a base model 1660 which is priced at $219. When it comes to performance, the card is right around what we expected. It beats the 3GB 1060 by a pretty decent margin in most games, and when compared to AMD's equivalents, NVIDIA's newest card prevails, but not by all that much. Looking at quite a bit of benchmarks, the 1660 beats out the RX 590 by around 3 to 7% and the RX 580 by about 13%. Now, when compared to the 590, that's not a big increase, but with current pricing, most of the RX 590s are slightly more expensive. To top it off, the 590 takes quite a bit more power when in real-life scenarios, and yes, I know most gamers don't care much about power draw. I mean, we overclock, have big rigs to take the heat, so obviously it's not a big concern, and it shouldn't be, but when one performs better with less power, it's something to note. So why in the world would I suggest that the GTX 1660 isn't the ultimate RX 590 or 580 destroyer? Well, it's the games. As of right now, and it could change in the future, but right now, AMD is offering 2 free games with their RX 580 and 3 with the 590. If you're someone who planned on buying really even one of the games offered at full price, the difference in performance evaporates. If NVIDIA would have offered something similar, AMD would be in some serious trouble. But as it stands, the 1660 only comes, well, with itself. And actually, when you compare the current pricing of AMD's 580, the 1660 is up to 15% more expensive with only around a 13% increase in performance. With that said, there is something to say about the 1660 actually performing better. While it may not be the absolute best price to performance when compared to AMD's offerings, it still performs better in nearly every game. But if you're on a tight budget, and especially plan on buying one or more of the games offered, AMD really isn't out of the race like some reviewers are suggesting. And if they're able to make a decent comeback with Navi, NVIDIA could have a really tough time keeping up with the mid-range cards. Oh, and on Navi, I do have an exclusive story I'll be discussing here in the next couple days, so make sure to subscribe for that. So while that does it for today, what do you think of NVIDIA's newest Turing GPU? They're definitely selling out fast, but I'll have a few linked with some AMD equivalents down in the description below. And as always, have a great day.